there was a massive storm, sort of 8 to 10 meter waves, 80-kilometer winds. Our boat ended up capsizing. It was designed to self-right itself, but it didn't.
What inspired you to launch Rock and Rope, Egypt's first climbing center?
So actually, it wasn't Rock and Rope. That was the original name that we intended, but it ended up being called Base Camp Egypt. And what that was Egypt's first adventure park. So it's a adventure park and a glamping destination, sort of a glamorous camping destination. So it exists in the Red Sea, probably an hour and a half drive from Cairo. And it's sort of nestled in the middle of the mountains, overlooking the Red Sea. And the inspiration behind it really was because I'm a big advocate and passionate about nature. And I believe, we have all these challenges ahead of us, with climate change and single-use plastic and so on. And there's a huge impact on nature. And I've had personally a very emotional connection. So when I see any transgression against nature, it's almost like a visceral thing that's happening. And I believed from experience that the only way to protect nature and to raise awareness about the importance of it is to get people to fall in love with nature in the first place. And so in a culture like the Middle East, where a lot of the times, in Egypt especially, a lot of the times people are far removed from nature, especially people living in Cairo, it's really important to create that stepping stone, a place that is within nature, but still provides some sort of comforts that can be kind of like a sort of a gateway or a rite of passage in a way to get people to sort of then get really comfortable with that, fall in love with it, and then say, well, maybe next time I'm going to go do a hike or go camp for a few nights in the desert and so on. So that was really the inspiration behind it.
How important is good teamwork in adventuring?
It's paramount, really. Like I've had the fortune of doing various kinds of adventures, from climbing mountains and going to the polar regions, like the North-South Pole, the Arctic regions, and so on, to venturing into the ocean. So my last big adventure, I should say, was an attempt to row across the Atlantic Ocean with a buddy of mine. So I can take really any one of those examples and make a comment about teamwork. But if I was just to take one, let's say the last one, the ocean one. So think about this, two people in a 2x7 meter rowing boat trying to row across this vast ocean, sort of 5,000 kilometers from the Canary Islands to Antigua. So after a couple of days or even one day, you find yourself just staring at the vast blue all around you, 360 degrees. And it was an unsupported expedition. So it means that all you have is your teammate and your boat. I mean, the boat had a name at that point. The boat was called Jan. My teammate was called Omar. And we were really the three characters on this journey. And on the 9th day, there was a massive storm. Sort of 8 to 10 meter waves, 80-kilometer winds. Our boat ended up capsizing. It was designed to self-right itself, but it didn't. And then basically what happened was the life raft that is supposed to inflate at a time of sort of need didn't inflate. And what transpired was 12, 13 hours where Omar and I were treading water, trying to manually inflate the raft, and eventually got rescued 13 hours later in the dead of night in a crazy story that was so crazy that actually had a documentary film made about it that was just out in the cinemas a couple of weeks ago, and is just now, at least in the region here, is on a sort of a streaming platform. The movie tells our story about trying to row across the Atlantic, but also juxtaposes, and that's the part we're most excited about. It juxtaposes our story with the plight of refugees crossing dangerous seas, searching for better life. And so we're trying to use that experience of almost rowing across the Atlantic to raise awareness about such an important issue that's facing humanity today.
While on an expedition, how do you lead your team to success?
Well, I mean, like we were saying, I think we've established that obviously, working as part of a team in any of these ventures is crucial. Now that's something, but it's a completely other thing than to keep that team motivated that you may be a part. I mean, you are a part of as well, until the very end. I think it depends on your style of leadership. Some people lead from the front, some people lead from behind. I'm sort of more. My personality is a bit more reserved, so I'm sort of this quiet leader of sorts. What I try to do early on, and a lot of these expeditions are days or weeks long, is basically starting when things are still starting at their nascency. It's good to kind of get people sort of thrown into the deep end early when the stakes are not very high, to start developing that confidence. To start, because you've selected the people because they have the necessary skills and attributes to do it, right? But they may lack the self-belief or confidence that they can do it. So it's important to build that up early on. The thing that's extremely important as well is what happens before you actually go on expedition. And I like to call it sort of the what-if game. And the what-if game is so important to do before an expedition. And that's where you ask yourself and your teammates, what happens if you get injured? What happens if I'm weak? What happens if I get sick? What do we do, right? Because it's so important to align on the same values. And while you can't basically predict thousands of sort of iterations of things that could go wrong, by going through as many as you can, the decisions that you have to make in real time when you are potentially like in harm's way become more second nature and become more immediate. I'll just give a very quick example. In 2007, I was climbing Mount Everest with 3 people, 2 people, an English friend, Welsh lady who became actually the first Welsh woman to climb Everest, and a South African friend of mine. And about 7 weeks into the expedition, we were on the way to Camp 3, which is sort of there's 4 camps that you need to hit before you go to the summit. And on our way to Camp 3, we encountered the body of a climber who had just perished 10 minutes before we reached him. So we didn't see him falling, but from the debris around him, we could tell that he had fallen. He had taken a hard fall. So we had to make a decision whether we're going to keep going that day or we're going to turn back, right? So it was obviously very frightening, and it's easy to make irrational decisions when you're scared. But we had already talked about a similar situation hypothetically, and we knew that if we're put in the same situation, that every single member of the team, even if he's the minority, has the privilege to say, I'm not comfortable, let's turn back to camp that day to regroup and to plan forward. So we were standing in a group of 4. All my 3 teammates said that they're comfortable to go on, but I was the last one to have my say. And even though I decided that we should keep going, I didn't feel the pressure, the peer pressure of having to say yes because everybody has. I knew that everybody would be completely supportive if I decided to turn back. And then the last learning bit here is that the reason why I decided to keep going, and I think my teammates did as well, is that you realize when you prepare for something and you know that thing is going to be hard and it's going to be dangerous, you have to sign up understanding that things are going to go wrong inevitably. So when they do go wrong in the actual thing, you're not in decision-making phase. So this is not the time to say, oh, what a bad idea for choosing to go up Everest. Maybe I shouldn't have done that in the first place. You realize that you're not in decision-making mode anymore. You're now in execution mode. So now is the time to put your training into practice, to work at what you set out to do, understanding that what you're feeling now, which you might be very scared, and that's a human feeling, is just a natural feeling that's happening because of the current circumstances. But you have the tools, you have the training, you have the right team to be able to go through. So we ended up getting to Camp 3 all together as 4. It was a very difficult day, and what had happened was weighing on our minds. But we were very happy to have kind of reached that decision and conclusion together.